The August 21st, 2024 meeting at 6:02. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda? The only thing I have is that came in after the agenda was posted was a request for relocation of a pole down here on School Street, having to do with the School Street Bridge. Anyone else have anything?
I read that email. That was very strong language in that. More of a threat than a request, or not.
It's a, I think it's just a boilerplate, adjustment, relocation adjustment or.
Didn't see the word please anywhere in that publication.
Put that under the select board review and action. I will take a motion to accept the minutes of August 7th.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Do we have any adjustments, additions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So carried. Comments from the community? Aye. Come up here if you want.
Yeah. Proposal, and I've been thinking about for a while. It's the area where the old depot station was, the foundation. And that is, I got some maps here. That area is not in the floodplain. There was I've got a picture here of railroad cars in back on this side of that foundation. So that's not in the floodplain. And I guess that whole area is owned by the state, by the rail trail. To clear the brush out of there and see what we got there for be a great place for the rail trail. I talked to Bill Mason, who was a real advocate of the rail trail. And he said he'd like to see that brush cleared off there too. That would be the first thing we have to do. Probably have to get permission from the rail trail group, the DOT. To do something like that. And then once we get that, if we get that cleared off, we can take a look at what's there. And it's quite an area that foundation is 20 feet by 60 feet. That could be filled in with stone or something, and something could be built on that. It would be better to be right on the rail trail than, because people don't know where to come in the road and you know, when they have a little kiosk over there. But that's something I'd like to do. I'd like to head it up. Maybe we can get I think the best way to do it would be to get an excavator in there and just pull that brush and trees out, leave the dirt. And, we could do it with that instead of going in and cutting the trees. I was over there with my clippers and I clipped around with the foundation, I put a stake and flag on every corner. And so you can never get out there and take a look at it. When I first walked in there, I thought I was going to like one of those Aztec jungle, where the jungle takes over and you don't know where the foundations are, and I almost ran into the foundation before I saw it. To get a chance, take a walk out.
So that's right off the trail there?
Yep, right off the trail.
I
Yep.
think that's neat. So the town doesn't own that?
Right, state owns that.
Right, so you would have to reach out to them. The town is actually, they did offer, us, we were leasing a strip there along Railroad Street, where our portal is in on-town property. We are leasing that strip from them to be able to have the portal up there.
Yeah, well, that could be moved to that site too. Instead of having it away from the trail. Because a lot of people go by fast on their bike and they can't, they're not looking. A lot of places. That was just an idea that I had, I've been thinking of for a while. And just recently got all excited about it. I'd be willing to help. Do it, you know.
So do you need contacts or anything to reach out to the state? Do you have that information?
Yeah, I'll get all the state. I called Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie.
Oh, Jackie, she hasn't got back to me yet. They're pretty busy.
Yeah, she'd be the one to talk to.
Yeah, I know. She's living.
Yeah.
Anybody like to see it? I'd like to show you some of the stuff I've got here. You don't mind me coming up?
What were you looking for in terms of the town?
I don't know, I might be able to get a volunteer, the next day up there.
Put those small papers on the monitors up here. Well,
What's that?
if you have like letter size paper,
Oh,
I can put it up on the screen for you.
okay.
That one might be good.
Here's a photo of that here. I got these photographs of the Soil Conservation Service. You can see, here you are here. It's a library. Back of, this was after the, I forget what it was, it had been the seventies. Depot station.
Yeah.
I wasn't,
Must have been in the seventies.
yeah, I don't remember the date exactly. And that's just the. You can see the rail cars.
Mhm.
I think the engine was right on the road. I would say that was after the. People was doing.
Why is the engine on the road? Stay on the-
The track leads in there. It was a side.
Just exciting, yeah.
Used to be able to park 20 cars. Plus they have the snow plows and boosts.
But what I'm really interested in knowing, when you're out there talking to them, how far our road goes and where their right of way comes in.
Oh, okay.
I'm really interested in that.
We're gonna spend 6 months.
Have that.
Is it about 60 feet from the road?
It's what?
About 60 feet to the foundation.
Oh, no, you can almost touch a thing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real close. And I saw an old, the picture you got of the railroad station, there's another track, it was really close on the front side. That was unload stuff to the back.
Right. It's on the road. They had the old green neighbors over here.
Yeah.
So they moved the green cans, milk over.
Wouldn't take too much with the excavator. And I'd be willing to be there. I do a lot of that work anyway.
Why don't you reach out to the state and see if they'll
Oh,
let
yeah,
us
I will.
do that? And if so, then maybe we can advertise as a town, look for volunteers to help you.
Sure.
All right?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's like.
The able to work.
Yeah.
So did you want to speak, Keith?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
I'm pretty sure you know what I'm going to speak about. Unfortunately, I haven't paid a lot of attention to things going on in town and been very busy and. But it come to my realization in the last week or so that as taxpayers, we're being asked to help fund wastewater system for the village. And it's only gonna benefit the village. It's gonna do nothing for me.
I think you have some misinformation, so we aren't gonna be asking taxpayers to fund the system. Because, since we had our original bond vote that we put out, we were able to secure another, $1.4 million. To cover all the costs,
From grants.
yes.
Grants are taxpayer dollars that just sift down through different channels. So we're still gonna pay for it. That's my argument. My other thing, and I was on Zoom last night and felt that I was cut off a little short, which is fine. I want to know how people feel about using the recreation field and the playground at the school as a leach field.
We had.
What's a long term, if something fails, what's it gonna do to the school grounds? What's it gonna do to the school? If it fails, are they gonna come back and say, okay, well, we can't occupy this, so now we've got to build a new school, or we've got to tuition everybody out? I think they're legitimate questions that should be answered before this is voted on.
We are holding an informational meeting
Mhm.
on that vote, at our select board meeting on September 4th at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And that's where we'll be answering all those questions. We'll have engineers, the state, the wastewater committee,
Who were the engineers on it?
Stone Environmental.
And all the grant money, if this town doesn't spend it, the state will give it to some other town to spend because they have to use it. There'll be some other project coming right down the pipe. They'll use that money if we don't. So either way, they're gonna, since they aren't gonna get it back to feds, they're gonna spend it. So some town in the state of Vermont will be using it. It could be fixing septic systems too.
In my mind, that's not a bad thing. If there's a town somewhere that needs it, that's going to benefit more than a small group of people in a small location.
If I could say just one thing to your point about the tax base in general not being able to benefit from that. My personal life, I'm a contractor. I've been attending a lot of the classes that the state of Vermont has been putting on in terms of what they're trying to do with wastewater permitting. Since 2007, it has been under control of the state, not the town. It hasn't been on a town level. What they're trying to do is they're moving towards licensure models for all the contractors that install that. As such, they're putting on classes. In these classes, I've learned that some of these older grandfathered systems that a lot of these houses in the village share, or they don't share them. They're all private systems currently. Those systems are no longer going to meet. They're not going to be grandfathered anymore.
And that's fine. The people,
So where I'm headed with that is these lots don't have soil types that will allow for a redesign. They don't have lot sizes large enough to put in replacement systems. So as the systems that these old houses are being served by fail, those houses stand a chance of being condemned. And how that impacts the tax base is there are 1,600 residents that share a $2 million budget to run this place. If we have to, by state regulations, condemn all these houses, we've now lost, I don't know what the number is.
what's the number of houses that are on this, they're gonna be on this system?
That I don't.
My other understanding is that at the present, there are only like 3 or 4 systems that are in danger of failing.
By the
Some of those are owned by the same person, several of them.
By the current standards, yes, but if the state updates those standards and a non-engineered system, like the one I have in my house on Sand Hill, a non-engineered system is no longer acceptable. That means there are going to be a lot of remarks, both in the village in a floodplain, but also us on the hills. They're going to have our systems inspected or re-engineered, redesigned.
And I know, I'm in the middle of a deal right now to get a permit for a backup wastewater system.
And it's like pulling teeth.
It's $4,000 out of my pocket. And my point is this, I've got to pay for my own. These people all bought these houses knowing that they had a separate system. And why does it become my problem to deal with them?
The only point I was trying to make is
Right.
losing those houses off the tax rolls would not be a benefit to the town.
But it's just, it's frustrating to see this kind of, and also the fact that we want to run all of this stuff up the hill to the school. If there's a failure, now you hear of the schools in different places having whatever issues. Burlington, for instance, I mean, that's just a quick example, where they're in the process, they had a problem and have been out of the school. So you're going to take the chance of contaminating that, and making it not usable as a school. It's just, it doesn't make sense.
That and all the town buildings, I would assume do not meet the current standards either for septic systems according to the state.
This one would only because our system is relatively new. The town garage wouldn't, the town hall.
But it gets flooded, every flood, it's down in the floodplain and it gets totally covered with flood waters. It's not gonna last.
Right.
And that's gonna cost everyone money to fix
So where
too.
are you going to put the tanks for these new systems? In the floodplain, right?
Yes,
So what's?
They're gonna be weighted, they're designed to be weighted, they're gonna be sealed so no water gets in. They're also gonna have a check valve, so if it fails, the sewer pressure can't go out. And it's going to the force main arm design and they're weighted.
Well, can you explain to me what's happened in Johnson, Vermont? Because their wastewater system from what?
That's,
They have a treatment.
they have a treatment plant that in the 90s, their board of people said, instead of putting it on a hill and making a pump station, which would be the equivalent of having all these pumps going up, they built a $10 million facility on right by the river for the shortest distance. Instead of going, say, up the top of their hill, running a force main up, running a line down, and that's why it keeps flooding out.
and those are entirely different systems. That's a chemical treatment plant. We're talking about a leach field.
Yeah,
You know,
this is much
That's why I
simpler.
asked, because I know that they're spending millions right now.
Yeah, and it's apples and pitchforks. It's completely different. They're not even closely related.
I mean,
I guess for the informational meeting, I assume you're gonna have the engineers there to be able to answer questions.
Yeah.
The engineer, the state, yep.
Okay, so I think just in their planning, it would be helpful for them to be able to answer questions like, okay, let's say it does flood again. What does that look like in the response from the town on how to handle and mitigate that piece if the system's in place? What is that really going to entail? They have to inspect every single tank. What is it that really has to come from that when there's a flood? And what does that cost? Just so people understand upfront, like, this is what we're looking at. We're thinking forward. We know this can happen. So we're being realistic about it. I mean, I think that would help put maybe some people's minds at ease about that the system is designed by people who know what they're doing. It's intended to withstand these kind of issues, and this is what it'll look like. I mean, from my standpoint, personally, I live on Flatiron Road. I wasn't a part of the original design, but we're happy to voluntarily join the system. Just because when we bought our house, we know that, the system that we have is what it is. And we don't know exactly what it is, but we know we have a tank and some sort of a leach field. And so there's a potential for that to end at some point. And we planned ahead, paid for an engineer's study. We know if our system fails, what that's going to entail, which is a mound system in my front yard, which is
$25,000.
at the very least.
Yeah.
Fine. So, and that's what other people might be looking at, is similar types of costs out of pocket, which is unfortunate. And if there's an ability for some of us to be able to jump on, and I get not everyone's gonna benefit from it in the sense of like your waste.
Well, and I'm probably a little more burnt in the fact that, as I tried to explain last night, my system failed big time some years ago. And it was caused, in my mind and in my observation, by the way that the town ditched and installed a culvert. They dumped all the water in the neighborhood. It came down across my lawn and right through my leach field. So I came to the select board and said, hey, this is what's happened. What can you do to help me? So they sent somebody up to look at it, who basically looked at me and said, well, your problem. Why is it my problem? This was caused by your negligence. Well, it's your problem. You'll have to deal with it. Your ditch isn't deep enough. Didn't need a ditch till you guys put all of this water in here. Okay, so I did. The money came out of my pocket and I took care of it. I've since had a couple of times when we've gotten, in this last winter, summer and winter being one of those, where we've got enough water so that I've had water go through my leach field again. Not to the point of a failure, but to the point that I was nervous about it, and that's why I'm having another system engineered and paying for it so that it's in place. But it's just, as I tried to say, why should I pay for my own and be expected to pay for somebody else's?
So I guess, and this is public comment, I don't want to monopolize too much time on this, but I know you have a meeting coming up for it, that's kind of like, we should be talking about it, but other towns such as Morrisville, Johnson, who have systems which are not the same as this one, but they certainly are paying for systems. Does their entire tax base contribute towards that? You know, are all the taxpayers paying some fraction of the system, kind of like what's going to be occurring here? You know, I think other towns are doing that. I think it's just, you live in a village, you get certain aspects and benefits from living in a village. If you live outside the village, you get certain benefits and aspects of that. They're all different depending upon where you
I think in Morrisville, there's a sewer and water charge
Oh, there is, yeah.
from the light, so.
For those who are actively using it, but I'm just
Right.
wondering, is the cost of the maintenance of the system still spread across all taxpayers? That would just be an interesting.
I don't believe so. I don't believe so, but I can check.
That in Hyde Park. The way they had theirs set up when they redid their system, they had to put a new mound system in. They based it all on theirs, but technically the Lamont County Courthouse, so on there, their school was on there. So that's spread out over all of the county, the Lamont County Courthouse and spread out over their budget for the whole state, for the whole county, and then the school district was spread out over the whole town.
And even if you didn't have a system and all these buildings that are all town owned fail, that's going to be a cost to taxpayers to fix it. I mean, ultimately, you know, so it's kind of becomes one or the other and, you know, which way you want to look at it, but.
My other question I mean, your engineers, I'm hoping would have looked at it, but what is the leach field, the proximity of the water system at the school?
They're studying that now, actually. They've been working on that. They mentioned it at our meeting the other night, that they are.
I think they have like 3 different sections of the state for different things, all doing their best to make sure that meets all requirements they have to before they can, as part of the process for their indirect discharge permit.
What other options were there rather than using the playground recreation field?
Well,
I mean, is there anything in this new town forest? Is there an area there that could be?
they actually did some soil borings in the forest and the soil wasn't good. They did 3 or 4 sections. They did where that solar panel is out here. That didn't work. They tried out back here. That didn't work. We really wanted to look at soil borings up in the Grimes field, the field there, and Louis Menard's up Jones Road.
So didn't there used to be like a sand pit behind the town garage?
There's one up on Westover's property.
Right.
That's Westover's property. That's being sold in a buyout, so nothing can go on that.
I just,
So they did go around and like I said, 2 promising lots, the landowners would not let us do any soil borings. That is the one that came out perfect. Because it's nothing but a deposit of sand. You've been here long enough, you know that used to be our old gravel pit.
where the school is.
Yeah,
I was here when they built the school. I was on the
Yeah.
school board at the time.
yeah.
But it just concerns me that they're willing to take a chance on contaminating that. And let's face it, failures happen, and when a failure happens, there's no going back.
Well, always something happens, but there's 2 examples, one in Warren and one in Waitsfield. Actually, the school board had a lot of concerns and they went out and visited those schools and talked to the administration there and they've been working fine with no problems, no smell for 20 years.
I just,
But things-
I think it needs to be,
things happen.
I think it needs to be very publicly addressed before this moves forward. I mean, it's,
Well, it has.
It could be a-
But there has been, I mean, I don't know what meetings you've been able to make, but I mean, there has been other information put out there about.
Right, well, I said,
why they-
fortunately,
why they
in my
keep it
case, I
necessary.
have
So we
busy and
actually had a vote on that. The school board, the school had to vote, have a special meeting, which we had in June, to allow us to use that field, because we would have an easement on it.
I'll definitely try to make the informational meeting. It's,
I think we answer a lot of your questions, honestly. I think because
Right.
I've heard you asking things that I've heard in other meetings as well. And I mean, they're legitimate concerns. And I think there are, and there's a certain level of faith you have to have in people that you're hiring to do these systems and what they know what they're doing and they're educated and they're working with the state and there's laws and regulations that they'll have to abide by.
right,
For it to go into place, I think there's a certain amount of trust that has to go along with that, that they're doing the right thing by it.
but the other comment that I just heard that you made, and I heard it last night, is, well, if we don't do this now, we could lose the grants. Okay? In my mind, there are other places that probably need these grants as much as we do to benefit a small group. Like I said, that grant could benefit a much larger group of people somewhere else, which to me makes more sense.
The question is on the timelines of their projects, because they, with their construction time frame they got. They have to go through, any project has to go through full design and permitting by the end of, before at the end of 2026. They have a year and a half to do any project. So like the Clean Water SLF fund has, they have a problem every year. They have so much funding they gotta spend. And when it comes down to it, unless your stuff is 100% on the books, ready to go with your project, they cannot approve it if you don't do all your head homework on it. So as they lose projects, they give better funding amounts to other people. But most people don't put work to have their projects and build it in a year and a half. So as a result, they have really big problems with that every year because people have the homework in on it.
And just another commentary on what I think I'm hearing you say is this, call it $4 million pot of money could help another community. It could go a great length. You're not wrong. $4 million is a pile of money.
A lot more people.
But the problem is this money has been earmarked. The way I understand it, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that I understand the way that this budgeting thing works, this money has been earmarked for a wastewater treatment plant somewhere. So think of a town like us that, or similar size to us, that could use $4 million and install a wastewater system of some kind. All of those locations are about the same size as us. 6 or 7 years ago, there was a grant for a scoping study. They gave it to Wolcott and West Burke because the state determined that we were the two communities that had the most need. And out of the two, I think that we were, well, obviously we were chosen to be the most feasible and with the highest need because we have the highest population that could be served by the system.
Well, I mean, I put my points out there. It just,
Several other people like you have put in expensive systems.
mhm.
They don't want to go on it. Somebody told them they were gonna have to, they'd be
So,
convicted.
if you want to just come to the new informational meeting if we get more,
Okay,
hopefully your questions answered.
It's not that water system. So on a couple things. One, who's doing like the wood lot project and like actively cleaning that? I just want to say thank you for whoever's doing that, like
Where?
the town forest. They've been starting to like clear up the trails and
So we have that grant again. We have a grant to build the trails down from the school for the kids to ride their bike.
they've actively started doing it. It's wonderful.
Yes,
It's very,
yeah.
it's just very a nice addition to what we have going on. And it's just nice to see those kind of projects taking hold and like seeing some positive things occurring within the town. And that's just, it's a beautiful spot. Like I was thoroughly enjoyed the other morning when I walked out. I didn't realize they were doing that work out there already. And it's really nice. So just wanted to extend a thank you to whoever's doing that work. It's greatly appreciated. And the other thing too, I know that the wastewater system has brought up a lot of different opinions and thoughts and concerns and varying, degrees of agreement and disagreement around it. I just want to say thank you to you guys who are working on it actively. I know it's been a huge undertaking and, hopefully the work is not for no reason. So just appreciate that you guys putting that stuff in there. I know there's a lot of negativity around it. On School Street, I don't know what it would take. I'm wondering if you guys would entertain adjusting the speed from Flatiron to the town garage. It's currently posted at 35. I'm wondering if there could be a reduction in speed to 25 as a recreation area, if that ball field is revitalized. It's already an extra parking area for the rail trails, so people are parking there, hopping on their bikes and head over to the trail. It just, 35 is incredibly fast for that stretch right there.
Hey, I get it, I live on Route 15,
I know.
80 miles
So
an
Tom
hour.
was over there working with the people that are doing the trails because they were looking for a permit and trying to figure out the best, safest way for kids to get along School Street today. Originally, they were gonna build a bridge over the brook there, but that was not gonna work. So they're gonna have to come over that little bridge and come down along School Street. It'll go past, two of the houses we're doing the buyouts for, hoping to make the trail. But he said, I was standing out there, we need to do something. Those cars were going by 30 or 40 miles an hour, 40 or 50 miles an hour while I was standing there. And it's not gonna be safe for the kids to ride their bikes, so.
No, it's not. I walk it every single morning.
We do need to address it somehow.
So I think, just if it's possible, it would require like an ordinance change, because you have it posted at 35. But just looking at potentially reducing the speed, even if you push it up to where like town forest starts, because you're gonna have that access point as well right there. I think it would help a little bit, or at least it would give teeth to if the sheriff's department came out and enforced stuff, because even 35 looks really fast if you're standing there. But
That's why I
but
slowed
there might-
down the other night when we were walking the dog.
Yeah, and so just thinking about there's a fair number of people, we're gonna see an increase in traffic once you guys get Flatiron Road fixed and this bridge is out, so there's gonna be an increase there as well. So I think if it's possible to have a reduction in speed to 25 through that stretch, I think that would be a nice start anyways. A path adjacent to the road would be even better. So safety wise, that would be appreciated.
My thought is speed bumps.
That's what the potholes are.
No, those potholes they're skimming over them.
Oh, yeah, no, it's,
If you're doing 45, 50, they're still skimming them. But if you put in a 2-foot rise and down,
yeah, but if you put in a speed bump and your speed limit's 35, you're gonna be buying shocks and struts.
well, if you're saying reduce it to 25,
We buy enough front springs on plow trucks as is. How, just an idea out loud here, we're gonna have pedestrians on that relatively small bridge anyway. How much traffic is really on that road? Could we cut that bridge down to a 1 lane and put a barrier across and create a walking path just across the bridge, as well as reducing the speed limit? Or have you got enough traffic on that road? I mean, it's almost a 1 lane bridge right now. It's fairly narrow for a 2 lane.
A lot of Elmore people going to Elmore go that way.
There's a surprising amount of traffic,
Yes, there is.
so that probably wouldn't work even in the short term.
They're the ones that need to slow down.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking like what we have on the Gulf Road, that's a signed 1 lane bridge. Until we get money to replace that one with one that matches the one we're doing up here. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you're planning on for that bridge. I mean, it's certainly an idea, but most people, I say, a reasonable amount of people do slow down if you're actually on the bridge and they're driving across it. But it's just this stretch, once you get down here where there's the corner, you can't actually see beyond the corner, like that's sketchy when you're walking along, so. And
Is that something, Michelle, that you could put on the to-do list to look into how to our speeding ordinance?
Yeah, would it need like a traffic study?
Right.
Go from has on it before we could do that.
Yeah, so that's why I'm gonna get her all background information on how you go about it.
Did you guys have a timeline on Flatiron Road, that project?
We're having a little bit of problems, but it has to be fixed by 2026 when the construction on Wall Street, because that bridge will be closed.
I'm not complaining, I don't mind the long driveway, so just, it's pretty quiet there right now.
Okay. Then let's move on to the set the annual school street water system rates. And you all have a packet in front of you, know what's come. This first one shows that they're in the hole by $804, but we have $500 in outstanding invoices. I don't know why. You have a sheet here that tells you who owes what. So, these are. Rate that we've been, using for a while has been $25 a month. $150 for 6 months.
These delinquencies are chronic.
They aren't, two of them are, this, one of them is, and you just have to go over and remind them. Nudge them, two of them are. They have not, two of them are. Let's say they haven't been chronic at all, I'm not sure if it's a, we're not paying them because of our, decision on, not abiding by the school policy, former school policy that we made at our last meeting. So following, this is considered a utility. We have state laws we have to follow. I've asked Belinda to start billing them. You can bill them for so long and then you can shut it off, shut the water off.
So Linda, you have to bill them for 90 days and then after that you can send them a shut off notice.
So you first started billing them on June 1st?
Yes.
Okay. So in September?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good timing before winter. You don't want to try that in the winter.
That was last meeting. We elected not to.
Or the meeting before, one or the other, we got the, yeah, because no, it wasn't last meeting, it was the meeting before, because
Say you were in the other room.
I sent the letter to them, we had the response from our attorney. And then I had to write the letter, I think I told you last meeting that I sent the letter to them. Saying that we weren't going to abide by an old school policy. Which leads me to the fact that we should set our own policy. As the new owners of it. We don't have a policy now. I mean, I could have, Michelle, start doing a draft policy on it, if I knew what the board was interested in.
Easiest thing to take a look at state rules on your time frames. And all that, so those in your policy.
I think the policy that they were complaining more about was, do we fix the line to the shut off? Or do we fix the line to the house? I mean, we as a town don't have that in writing. So there's no direction when something breaks for, town employees to know what to do. So that sort of thing, we need to have a policy on. Also, we probably should have a policy on who is going to go up and check the spring. I know they go up there and they put bales of hay around it every fall. They check it for the overflow. Maybe that's something they should not be doing, and our handyman should be overseeing. Just throwing some ideas out there. I don't know what else you could add, but I think we should have our own written policy.
Do that or have them form their own committee and get rid of it.
Well, I did ask them that.
I've asked them, but no response.
I don't think they're interested. It's easy this way.
It's theirs.
I think some of them are scared. They don't want they're scared in terms of who's gonna be controlling it. Thing is, there's only 5 of them.
Current rates are adequate for the expenses incurred if you don't factor in the delinquents.
I'm gonna let Belinda answer that as treasurer.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
You feel that $25 a month is adequate water bill for our repairs to cover the cost?
Right, well, right now, if everybody had paid, we would not be in the negative and we'd actually be in the positive. If you want to increase it per month, then you could create a kitty, a little fallback if we did have an expense. I don't know. I wouldn't go more than 30.
But is it really necessary? You have to have a reason why you want to increase a fee. Do you think $25 is adequate?
Oh, yeah, it is adequate as long as, we don't get any major bills. And when we took it over from the school had done major renovations before we actually got that system.
Stick with the same rate. We try to pursue the delinquent
And
more
And-
vigorously.
create our own agreement and have our users sign it would be.
Make sure there's any good interest, if there's interest on the bill that's late, so.
Yeah, I think that's spelled out in state statute, but we can,
Yeah, we can do 1% a month.
They even tell you what color paper it has to be in.
Yeah, it has to be pink.
It's the bad.
Richard is motioning that we set the water rate for $25 a month, beginning September 1st, 24 to August 30th, 26th. You have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so carried. Kurt Billings asked if I could have Steph come from the Wolcott Planning Commission and talk about new zoning regulations, state statutes doing with flooding, so Seth is here tonight. to give us a small presentation.
Do you want me to sit up there? So, in this last legislative session, the legislature passed a bill, S 213, when it was working its way through the Senate and House, and now it's referred to as Act 121, that changed in some ways or added to in some ways the way the state regulates floodplains, river corridors, and wetlands. I will go through the details of that. I think before I do that, I want to take a quick step back to what how Wolcott's current floodplain regulations work, just because I think that will provide some background that will be helpful to understand how this new legislation could impact Wolcott. So think of the floodplain as having two areas. There's what's called the floodway, which is sort of the more moving channel during a large storm. And I'm oversimplifying things. So if there are river scientists here, I'm acknowledging that I'm oversimplifying things to try to get through the night in the time that you have. So the river, the floodway is the most dangerous section, the area where it's most likely to experience damage. Then there's on the outside of the floodway, the floodplain, sometimes called the special flood hazard area, sometimes called the 100-year floodplain. It has numerous names just to make this extra confusing. That is where you have an inundation risk, water going up and down. The state of, that is how FEMA recognizes floodplains. The state of Vermont has a different and additional area called the river corridor, sometimes called the erosion hazard zone, because FEMA's regulations are really set up for coastal areas and the Gulf, where you have generally broader, flatter topography. And so the water more does primarily up and down like this. We know in Vermont, we have mountain streams, we have rivers like the Moyle River that in addition to rising also meander, and cut into their channels. The river corridor area is that erosion hazard zone where the river moves laterally back and forth, where there's more risk from erosion and damage. And I think you all understand, from North Wolcott Road, the types of damage that can do. So Wolcott's current regulations, which were adopted by the voters, I think in 2016, prohibit new development in the floodway, so the inundation area where the channel would be moving during a larger storm. And in the 100-year floodplain require any new or substantially damaged or substantially improved structures to be elevated above what's called the base flood elevation. The base flood elevation is the elevation level at which FEMA's modeling shows the flood occurring at the 100-year. In the future, you might consider looking at that elevation and whether that should be higher given recent events. That's a future consideration, not part of this legislation. So hold that term base flood elevation in your mind a little bit. Wolcott also goes above the FEMA standard because we require what's called compensatory storage, which means if you are doing elevation of a building, which is going to require moving fill, you need to offset that fill so that neither the height of the water or the speed at which it's moving changes. So that's starting to get to that river corridor area through the tool that FEMA has provided. So that's your regulations as they stand currently. What this bill that was passed by the legislature will do is also create by January 1 of 2028, so it doesn't go into effect immediately, but it does go into effect in a couple of years, a state level permitting program for development that is in that river corridor erosion hazard zone. So what that will mean is that new development in that erosion hazard zone will need to go through a state level process similar to, and the exact rules are being developed, but similar to how the state has rules for development in wetlands and some other types of areas. And important to keep in mind, when we say development, people often interpret development as new buildings, in the state statute. Development will also mean any man-made change, and I'm reading directly from this, so it's going to sound legally, but any man-made change to improved or unimproved real estate, including buildings or other structures, mining, dredging, filling, grading, paving, excavation, or drilling operations or storage of equipment or materials. So that's a pretty broad slate of activities that as of 2028 will require a state permit if they're in that river corridor zone.
So others, you want to put a shed and store stuff, you have to get a permit.
Right, a permit from the state, not just the zoning district, correct.
Just sake of curiosity here, say you wanted to store materials within that river corridor for 30 days while you were staging a construction job that wasn't in the river corridor. Do you need a state permit for that? Is there a duration of storage defined?
So that is a good question. I think that the ANR, Agency of Natural Resources, has been directed to a rulemaking process. And I think that would be the kind of issue that would be addressed in the rulemaking progress. I think as a town, a rural community, where you've got a lot of contractors who live and work in Wolcott, a comment like that is the kind of thing that would be important to share in the rulemaking process, but it's not something unless it's good to make sure they think about it. I won't say they won't think of it if you don't tell them. That might not be a positive thing to say. But I think that it would be a good idea if you have comments or concerns about that, to make those kinds of comments. That would be, storage of equipment or materials, unless it's clarified in the rules, that could be open to interpretation of an individual regulator. So that's the piece to consider. And I think this gets to your earlier point about, there is movement since these larger floods of more state oversight of what happens in these erosion and flood hazard zones. Another piece of the legislation will be, as of that same date, the state will also be developing minimum standards for flood hazard regulations. Flood hazard areas, so where the water goes up and down, will still be regulated at the local level, but there will be minimum standards that those towns have to meet. Again, Wolcott currently exceeds the FEMA minimum standards because you have that compensatory storage requirement. But that's another thing to watch between now and 2028 of how those minimum standards are similar or different from your current rules. There's a last piece of the regulations that would, or of the statute that would require the Vermont wetland rules to be amended so that there is a net gain of wetlands when wetlands are impacted, which currently is not a net gain standard. There's kind of if wetlands need to be impacted a 1-to-1 standard. And that's something to think about, for potential highway projects in the future. All of this just is pointing to, the direction of the state is to move buildings and infrastructure away from floodplains, river corridors, and wetlands to the degree that is feasible. We'll say that Wolcott, in this last piece, the restoration, I think Wolcott has been very active in recent years in restoring floodplains and wetlands. You have the big project on Elmer Pond Road. You have the upcoming project on North Wolcott Road. You also have a project under development across the river from Flatiron. So hopefully something that's recognized in this process is other work that municipalities are doing. there's some way for you to get credit for that. That might be something to monitor and think about commenting on the rulemaking process out of schools.
They add any new state employees to this bill to give out these permits, because it's so hard to get them to respond.
I'm guessing no, they're gonna reassign someone from somewhere else in A
They
and
don't
R to
need
go do
one,
it.
they need 10.
I believe that was actually a point of contention in the legislature over the bill, and they looking for that. I don't know the exact answer. I do know that whether it is 0 or more than 0 is less than the agency request. But I don't recall. And apologize, I have to look through.
That's all right.
Let me get.
I was just being sarcastic.
Yes.
What was the bill number for now?
Act 121 is the adopted number. When it was working through the session, it was S213.
There's a compensatory storage. How close to the development you're working on have to be? I mean, it can't be like a mile down the river, it has to be within that site.
I think the specific language is that it's hydraulically connected. So, you have to be able to demonstrate that the water you're offsetting is going to go in that area, and that becomes harder and harder to do the farther you get.
That's kind of something we're dealing with Flatiron.
It's, no, you do with Flatiron Road, the engineers who did the sort of alternative analysis do have the modeling. But if you need access to that modeling to prove to A&R that you're meeting the compensatory storage, that's a tool we could provide you. And will not be a cost for the data. There might be some cost for the analysis, but there wouldn't be a cost for the data.
So my question is, has the floodplains in Wolcott changed?
So that is a good broad question that is probably bigger than this bill. So I'll jump into from the beginning, and you can stop me if I go back too far back, but so back in 2017, 18, and 19, the town through municipal planning grant worked with us, LCPC, Wolcott County Planning Commission, to do modeling of the main stem floodplain through Wolcott. That included building out on the data, taking survey and channel survey data, and understanding sort of those issues better. So we very detailed modeling and understanding of the dynamics of the river. I would say on the question of has the floodplain changed, the floodplain definitely is different than it was during the when maps were drawn the first time. I think it is a good idea to be using the as a planning standard, not necessarily a regulatory standard for private people, but for planning standards for your infrastructure. The 500-year numbers from the FEMA maps until those numbers are updated, as well as the hydraulic data and velocity data from the modeling, because the FEMA maps don't provide you the velocity data, which for the kinds of things you think about, like bridges and public infrastructure, that's as important as the elevation data. Pause there. We can get into the FEMA map update process, which has a little bit of drama. So I can give you drama tonight, or we can save that for the Opera House and other stories. But if you want that drama, I can spend some time on it. You're laughing, so I'll keep going with it. So the draft maps for the memorial, we haven't been able, that FEMA has created, You may have heard in the news media that FEMA has put a pause on the draft map updates for now. That is because in Johnson, it was discovered that the base flood elevation, so that predicted level of flood elevation, water surface level during a 100-year flood based on FEMA's new maps, the ones they were working on and released earlier this year, went down by 2 feet. So FEMA was actually saying the floodplain was getting smaller, not bigger. And what we learned when we asked and pushed on that was that it was FEMA was still using they were using the current topography, but the old 1980s flood studies, they hadn't incorporated data from the Halloween storm, the July 2023 storm, the December 2023 storm, or the July 2024 storm. So the Agency of Natural Resources, based on that, and that was found out somewhat by chance because Johnson was looking at questions about where to relocate some of their facilities, like we talked about earlier, and it didn't look right. So the Agency of Natural Resources requested FEMA pause that process and incorporate the new data and decide whether they need to reevaluate their 1980s flood studies based on that. We also looked at the flood levels that were used from our modeling, which was also done in Johnson, which did show the numbers going up, not down. And that also led to FEMA, as of 2 days ago, pausing the process to incorporate the new data. I think that will mean you will probably see changes in the floodplain once that data comes in, just based on experience. So it is a good idea for infrastructure projects. For example, the School Street Bridge is utilizing the modeling data to figure out the span and has modified the span a bit to accommodate more flow from the river. The wastewater project is having the ballasting and floodproofing to the 500-year instead of the 100-year. You're using that data for Flatiron Road. So I encourage you to continue using for infrastructure planning, those higher levels until you have new numbers from FEMA that incorporate those more recent flood events. Did that answer your question? It did. Have they changed? I think they definitely changed.
I mean, they've changed, but they haven't given us what that information is over the bank.
Right. I would say you have better data than 90% of towns in the state of Vermont because you can utilize that AIMSTEM model. But FEMA has not given you official data at this.
Because in 1976, below my house, it was 14 foot over the river bank.
Yeah.
But they're going by 1980 information. Is that 1976 information in their database?
So, I would have to go back to the flood studies from the 80s to see if they had incorporated that flood event. I certainly hope they did in the 1980s. Certainly when they're doing this update, we're going to be asked to incorporate all the data of all events that are on record, which would include that event. It should be included in that. The Moy River modeling that we've done has absolutely. I should say we work with an engineering firm. I'm not sitting there with an abacus figuring this out. There's an engineering firm with hydraulic modeling expertise who does this work for us.
So with those possible new studies coming out, should that limit the new building in the floodplain or corridor?
So I think that broad answer is that will depend a bit. Your regulations, especially of the floodway, are about as tight as regulation can go, which is appropriate for the floodway because that's the highest risk area. I think you have strong limits already on what can be done in the highest risk flood area. In the inundation special flood hazard area, it may require more elevation and more compensatory storage. And the river corridor zone, you know, like the floodway, is pretty tightly regulated by the state. So it's probably a good question of, you know, defining development. I think in those areas that are in either three of those zones, what you're probably talking about in terms of development is, you know, changing how existing structures or existing land is used more so than building new buildings. Just to give, you know, an example that I think is a really instructive example of this is in Jeffersonville, the old McGovern granary, where they used to unload, you know, grain, has been rehabbed by Waterman Orchard and Johnson. That project involved removing about half of the floor area that was in the most high-risk zone based on, and rehabbing and floodproofing and brownfield remediation of the remaining. So that would be considered development, but it would be considered development that makes the area more flood safe because you've got less square footage and the square footage that is there is safer. But even with that loss of that square footage because of the renovations that were made, it's about $500,000 new on the local tax base. So I think that's probably what you would see based on the mix of the state regulation and your local regulations. Don't think you would be seeing things like, you know, new construction garages or in the floodplain based on these rules.
So it's pretty much updating the houses that are there so they meet whatever new rules come out.
Yes, yeah. Updating, change of use, you know, modifications to the interior, those kinds of things. With the added level of the state permit, you know, I think we would all maybe want to monitor that rulemaking process and the staffing levels to make sure that it works for Wolcott and is adequate for folks to get permits in a timely manner. Other questions?
Thank you very much, Seth, for coming and enlightening us.
No problem.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I'm happy if there's questions from you all. I'd be happy to talk to you about the Johnson projects. I'm working on that too, but not taking up their meeting for it afterwards.
No, it's okay.
We're gonna move on to the project manager's report.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay there?
Yep.
Great. So as probably all of you are aware, FEMA has entered into a phase which they call immediate needs funding. What immediate needs funding means is that there is, due to a lack of federal funding, FEMA has suspended all projects as they relate to our current disaster from 2013. And this is nationwide. This is a congressional issue. It has happened in the past 9 times historically, where the federal government has suspended all funding of FEMA. And this has a very direct impact on Wolcott in that none of our projects may advance to the obligation stage, which is, in FEMA's words, the payment stage. There are 2 exceptions to that. One is Category A and Category B. Category EA is debris removal. So FEMA will continue to fund any debris removal projects. Wolcott has 2 debris removal projects that really don't amount to an enormous amount of money, but those will be able to go through to obligation. The Category B is protective measures. And protective measures in the case of Wolcott is funding search and rescue from the 2023 flood. So this is activity that Jim and the fire department were involved with in saving lives during that period of time, and that funding will go forward. All other funding will be suspended. And one of the questions is existing obligated funds. We're thinking particularly of the Town Hill culvert where approximately $860,000 was obligated to the payment for the Town Hill culvert. That had advanced to the state level. And the question at hand is, will that be released to the town? And I am researching that at this point. I don't know exactly whether that will be released to the town or it will be held back with other FEMA funding.
According to Kim, it will be released.
It will be released. Okay, good. Yep. Just trying to get confirmation on that because it is a big step forward for the town if that money is released.
Here, she said, so I immediately, when I got that emailed her about that obligated project. She
Good.
said yes, and we just are waiting for the grant agreement. Which
Okay.
takes a while.
Yep. Okay, very good. Good. So for work to be completed, this would be things like Flatiron Road, Jones Road slide, East Hill slide, Town Hill slide. That is all work that in one phase, stage or another is considered to be work to be completed. And FEMA is highly encouraging the town to move forward with those projects and to continue to work on the projects, to continue the application process with those projects, to bring it to a point where when funds are released by Congress, Wolcott will be able to realize payment on very, very short notice. The other objective is that the payment and is dependent to some degree on FEMA dictated due dates. And if we were to slow down in our work schedule, we would run the risk of missing those due dates, which would further delay any funding to the town. Now that situation brings up an obvious concern, and that is how do we fund ongoing work when all of our application has been suspended. The suspension has been identified as till the foreseeable future. Like I said, Congress has done this 9 times historically. Congress eventually always does fund the FEMA, but exactly when is always an open question. So one of the possibilities for funding is to borrow money.
We've already borrowed $1 million for this.
I'm sorry, you already borrowed?
Yeah, $1 million, like
Right.
a while ago. So we already have the money. We've hardly spent any of it.
Right.
FEMA will hopefully pay the interest on all the unobligated projects.
Right. Yep. So that brought up the question that I put to Andy regarding interest, because interest on $1 million is a lot of money. And his response was that FEMA will cover loan interest cost up to the time of obligation. But projects will not be obligated until federal funds are released. So they're kind of maintaining their previous stance of committing to fund interest up to the time of obligation.
They're going to, can I ask you a question? Are they gonna obligate? They're gonna stop the approval right before the obligation
Correct.
point, so that if we continue with these projects and finish them, then Congress gives us the go ahead, then they'll flip the switch and they'll all be obligated. Isn't that my understanding?
That's correct. That is correct. As long as we continue to move forward.
Right, well, we are. Can you tell us when the deadline is, though? You keep talking, they keep talking about the deadline we have to meet. What is that deadline, so we know?
Each project has its own deadline, and I asked Parker today to supply us with a current list of their deadlines, and I will forward that to you. I should have it by tomorrow. It has been a bit of a moving target.
Yeah, I thought it was like 18 months if it wasn't emergency or debris, but
Right.
I'm not sure. Because if we don't, we have a snag and we can't meet that deadline, we have to write for an extension
That's correct. Yep,
to Kim.
that's correct.
So we
Right.
need to know what those are, and not like, you got 2 days, you're running out of time.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's been a bit of a moving target, but this latest event has put a lot of focus on the due dates. So I will distribute those tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Yep. I can also report that Wolcott has met the 90% threshold. So there was a question where obligations were coming in at 75%.
Right.
We needed to hit a threshold to hit 90%. We are at that threshold. And again, when the money is obligated, we'll realize the 90%. As you probably also know, as of yesterday, President Biden declared the 2024 disaster for Lamoille County, as well as some other Northeast Kingdom counties. So we now have a new disaster. It's disaster number 4810. And we will be starting that immediately. I know that Michelle has started to do some really good work on doing measurements, photographs, all of that kind of groundwork that needs to be done. Having gone through this entire process for nearly a year now, I think we're pretty well versed on how to move forward with this. Having said that, there will be a applicants meeting. It'll be a virtual meeting this Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it does require an RSVP. I have been looking for the proper people to give the RSVP to, and again, I'll try to get that by obviously no later than tomorrow. But we do need to RSVP that. If we can't attend that meeting, there will be one in Heinsberg towards the end of the month. And the funding for this latest declaration will be at 75%. And how that escalates to 90% is yet to be determined. So the good news is that, oh, by the way, when we talk about the 2024, that is the event from July, what was it? July 7th to July 12th, I believe. It does not include the very latest rain event, but this was the larger event between July 7th and July 12th. So a lot of changes. We're on hold. We're at the beckon of Congress, and good news is that the president has brought us forward with a declared disaster, which is going to require a whole new approach, or not a whole new approach, but a whole new process of making FEMA claims.
So can you tell me, or you said it was called an applicant meeting, you mean the recovery meeting? Do you have this, you have to initially attend?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Don't you have to go on first and request that on the
For the-
on the grant portal?
Yeah, see, I don't know where to request it, and that's what I'm trying to find out.
All
I
right, so
do,
I think I'm gonna have Michelle start on that. I did it last time.
okay,
So you have to go on the portal and say that you want reimbursement, and then that's when everything goes out to you.
correct, right.
My understanding,
That
yes.
must happen before Friday,
Huh?
before this meeting on Friday.
Yeah, you just a couple minutes on the website, on their website.
Kurt, are you attending the meeting on Friday?
Yes, I will be. Yep,
And you can fill me in?
I will. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, do you have access to the FEMA portal at this point?
No,
Okay, we can work through that as well. We'd have to do it tomorrow if you're available, Michelle.
I can, yeah, definitely on the time.
Okay, good. So that's all I got.
well, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Right, so. I've been working with the town garage, working, I met with Dylan. And, we just chatted about how I could best help him in his job. And, he said that he really just needs help with organization and basically prioritization. And so I pulled together some new timesheets that I think will aid him in helping him complete, just so the timesheets are a little more detailed to find out how many hours per day are spent on each project, each location. And that will help Dylan in pulling together information for grants or help us. So the timesheets are more detailed. I also created a weekly report that helps he and I to prioritize the projects that they're working on. And then I add to it all of the information that I receive from town people about the status of their roads. I've been fielding a lot of the town people, the inquiries about the status of their roads or complaints about, hey, can you come fix our road? Dylan and the road crew are working on Elmore Pond Road. We need to get that done for the grant and aid project. So that's due on September 30th. We're waiting on bids from Gravel Construction and Kingdom Timber for the Keeler Pond Road grant and aid. That also needs to be done by the 30th. Dylan doesn't think that he can get that done and everything else done. So I've got to call out to both of them, and they assure me that by Friday we'll get that bid in. And it was like Michael Parody refused to bid on that. He didn't want to bid. Not sorry. So then we'll figure out where that bid goes and get that project done by the 30th of September as well. We were able to get remember that the board had allowed, they gave Dylan a month or 4 weeks basically until August 17th to get in bids for any emergency work. So we were able to get gravel to do bidding on Turcot Road, Corley Road, and Gulf Road. I'm gonna go out and collect. I know that Michael has some pictures from Corley, but I want to get out and refine pictures I took on Gulf Road and Turcot Road so that they can then begin those projects. What I need to know from the board, though, is are you in favor of conducting these, or of us going ahead and contracting out for the FEMA 24 road work that needs to be done on Gulf Road, Corley Road, and Turcot Roads for the repair work? Knowing that we'll probably have to use some of that loan funds to pay for this work. Did I state that clearly enough? Clearly stated.
Making sure I understand, because we are in a gray area with FEMA as to when we're gonna get reimbursed for any of that. We need to make an approval to use the loan that we took out to pay for the work to be done.
I just need
No.
to know if we should proceed.
So, the trouble is, she did all this work. And then today we found out we got declared. We were going on, we hadn't been declared, so there are some dangerous spots that need to be fixed, and how are we gonna proceed with that? So the game has kind of changed today because we are gonna get reimbursed. But the same as the flood of 23. We had to fix the roads. We haven't seen a dime yet.
The work has to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted the board to know that we're gonna proceed. The bids are coming in, and a lot of this work cannot be done by the town. We don't have the equipment. We can't haul it. A lot of it requires riprap, so, or armor. Turcot Road's bid at 29,500. Corley's bid at 28,400. Gulf Road is 9,600. So, you're looking at 30, 50, like roughly 65-ish $1,000. So it's gonna start adding up. I just wanted you all to know that before I give them a call.
And we talked with Belinda, as treasurer, to find out what her cash flow was. Was it a problem, with paying this, just to feel her out? And she felt like we had good cash flow right now to do that.
And at the moment, I believe Belinda said that we had used 400,000 of the $1 million.
But we will be starting on the Town Hill culvert Thursday or Friday. And that'll be a $500,000, but it's already been obligated to get reimbursed pretty quickly.
I just don't know the likelihood of the town getting another loan. So just putting stuff out there. This is what's.
Well, yeah.
If we proceed, we'll start with Turcot. This is how Dylan prioritized on Turcot, then Corley, then Gulf. If I need a formal agreement, or I can.
We have highway standards that we have to live by. I don't really see it as an option.
As far as the issue with the beavers in a couple of the culverts, town culvert here and then the one up on Baldwin. Dylan went up and actually cleaned out that culvert, and I talked to Brian Cohen, and he said that the beavers have not returned. Brian went in and did a little bit more because he went way in. He actually waded in and went way into the culvert and pulled out a little bit more. And when I talked to him last week, the beavers had not yet returned. But I've got Tyler Brown coming out on Thursday, September 5th for a site visit for both of those culverts, and will let us know what they could do with the beaver situation, whether they want to build a fence or trap them. And then the Fitzgerald, Linda and Dylan and I met with the Fitzgeralds and the Brights up on Memory Road, talking about the town using the Fitzgerald's Drive for a turnaround for snow plowing. They were amenable to this. We wrote up an agreement. I have it here. It's waiting for signature from the Fitzgeralds, but I asked for Linda's signature and Dylan's signature, and then we said that we will file this where.
We will record it in the highway book, so it will be there forever.
Okay.
And we made it null and void once the Fitzgerald's no longer live there. It needs to be renegotiated or ended.
They are allowing us to make, in some of the softer soil, they're allowing the town to make any, add any gravel that they deem necessary, to improve that area so that they don't sink, don't lose the truck in it. So that's good to go.
How did that impact Mercedes culvert? Because her culvert was technically a shared driveway. I know that she had some concerns about that. I'm just curious where that landed.
They didn't seem like they had any concern. She had a concern with the culvert.
So with the flood and everything
Yeah,
else, when I was
right, yeah.
involved in all that,
Yeah,
she was under the impression that her culvert butted the town road, which looking at the maps, we learned
well,
it
I think
doesn't.
she realized that she was
Okay.
wrong.
All right.
They actually, Dylan pointed out the town line, but the marker.
Yeah, they were there just as moral support. They didn't.
Excellent. Good. I'm glad that's resolved.
I have Bob collected, so we have it's an old grant that Kurt applied for. We just, I think now have received the actual grant. It's for like $9,700 to replace the road signage and improve the reflectivity on road signs. So Bob's out creating an inventory, signage inventory. And this work needs to be done by December 31st. So I think we can maybe in the process of, can maybe start replacing the signs as we go. I don't think that 9,700 is going to buy a lot of it. I do have an email to Jim to see if possibly we can purchase high water signs, because I know Jim has an issue with, being later on the loop of the town or the state, when they go out and make the flood for the highways, state garage. And
Well, they never can get here. By the time it's high water, it's high water in Morrisville, and they can never bring them.
yeah, they said they start in Worcester and then they hit Hardwick, and they get here, and then they go to Johnson. So, and Morrisville, whatever portion is after that. They go to the first collar, which would be Worcester, is always the first place flooded. And then they hit on the way back, Hardwick, and then Wolcott. But I was gonna see if we could create, purchase a couple of high water signs. I just need to know how big they have to be, if we can actually place them on the road and then get an agreement with the town garage there, the state garage, to ensure that they don't pick up our signs when they go around. But I just want to find out how much they cost and if that's a possibility to include that signage.
So I believe the signs have to follow the MTU, what is that?
MUTCD, Municipal Uniform Traffic Control Device Manual.
And they tell you there's a manual of what all signs have to.
Yeah, that's in part of it, paperwork I gave Bob. So when we order them, they'll definitely, we're allowed to replace chevrons and stop signs and instructional signs, yield signs and things like that. And working on that. I've been advertising for the town lister in a couple of locations. Tom and I tomorrow are going to pull together he would like us to pull together an actual job description so that we can advertise that at community colleges as well. The actual garage light fixture recall, we've been now assigned a ticket number, so we're just waiting to be scheduled for the replacement of those pins. And then finally, I met with Tori Helwick with Lamoille County Planning Commission She came out and did an ADA assessment of town hall and the town offices and determined that there are some improvements that can be made in the back, minor improvements we can do by just moving around furniture, but we could put in for some money. Remember that we can get 20%, like you had to have ADA improvements in energy grants coming up. And so we do have changes that can be made. We need to change out the rails by the toilet. They're not long enough and they're not wide enough. And lower the mirror, just make some minor changes. Town hall, I mean, you can't even get into the bathroom. Town hall, it's not up to date, so. We'll just focus on the town offices for now. That's all I have.
So that is gonna lead into our energy audit discussion. So how did you leave it with Tori? Are you here representing Tori?
If you have questions, I can relay them back to her.
She was on the agenda last meeting, but we didn't come up. We kind of tabled it.
I was able to connect with her today.
Oh, good. But yeah, okay.
I was gonna say,
Are you done, Michelle?
Yes,
Thank you very much, Michelle. And we're going to get rid of the delinquent tax payment request because they're on the, move on to the energy audit.
So, as you guys all know, we got some energy audits done. There was a bunch of information in there, a bunch of different recommendations, solar panels, heat pumps, insulation, weather stripping. There was a pile of things that were suggested. So talking to Tori today on the phone, and she clarified a few things. There's a grant that will be announced very soon. We can apply for. There's no match up to $500,000. That grant can cover any of the recommendations that are in those energy reports. The grant can also cover ADA improvements if needed. She says here the town can attest that the building is ADA compliant or make any improvement that makes us more ADA compliant. And that needs to happen at time of completion for the other projects. Things that she and I discussed because, as Michelle said, the town hall is not ADA compliant, would cost a fortune to become ADA compliant. And we don't really do much with the building. The holding costs are fairly low. We need it to 55 unless it's in use. So our proposal, I guess, to the board would be focus on this building. And we as a board tonight need to decide how much, if any, we want to do from those recommendations. So that she can get working on the grants to get us first in line. She said there's something like $36 million slated for this project across all of us. So it's very unlikely that we'll get all of it. But in her words, you don't know if you don't ask. Like we've talked about in meetings before, my feeling is it's very, very important that we keep the heat that we're putting into this building. My priorities would be, we got to work on the insulation, we got to work on the air sealing. A further thought that I have is that as energy prices continue to rise, it does make sense to generate your own electricity where you can. I don't think that we're ever, as a town, going to be able to get the townspeople to pass, I believe it was a $69,000 estimate to put solar on this building. So if we wanted to pursue solar, I think that now is the time. I don't recall what the heat pump estimate was. I think it was in the 20s.
21.
So $20,000 to do heat pumps is something that I think that the town is capable of budgeting for, should we choose to move forward with that in the future. So it is my feeling that we should apply for a grant that helps us with the energy efficiency, the air sealing, the insulation, the weather stripping, those kinds of projects. And I also feel that because this is a no match grant, that we should apply for and hope that we receive funding for solar. That'll open a lot of doors for us in the future. We would then potentially be able to either put a battery backup in instead of the propane generator. We may also be able to install heat pumps at some point in the future, should we choose to. It is my feeling at this moment, working with heat pumps, that they just aren't. Me personally, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the tech, especially as a primary heat source.
No,
Although we do have, this is radiant here, which is a super efficient way to heat a building. It's unfortunate that we have oil instead of an on-demand propane, but we can cross that bridge when we get there. It did have the heating, it had the heating system age for this building too, written somewhere.
well, we built it in 2007.
So the boiler is not quite due yet, but they do have a life expectancy. So we'll be able to cross that bridge later. But anyway, that's what Tori needed to hear from us was we needed to make a motion on what and how much, if any, we wanted to move forward.
The thing I was dealing with lately, my own problem with power. I had several electricians say, the power will not allow you to put in solar panels.
So that is a thing that I've heard in the past and I've dealt with Brian before. And it has to do with whether or not their infrastructure can handle it. A way to kind of work around that is rather than
Put it on the grid, put it in a pack.
you could put it in a pack. I'm not certain what the laws actually state, but I don't believe that they can stop us from net metering. I think that goes against the climate initiatives that were passed at the state. I know that they have some fairly strong opinions and that they tend to not be accommodating with homeowners. But we are a municipality, we want to use a grant. We are trying to help reach the state's climate initiative goals that we've set. I really think they'd be hard pressed to say that we couldn't do that. But yes, we could absolutely do on-site. We could take a corner of that utility room, have a battery storage system and have this building change the way that it.
I think that would be a way to go.
Well, it would eliminate the need for the generator as well, which might become an issue when the schoolhouse thing happens and we have to relocate the generator anyway.
For batteries, was that type of system with the batteries, because there's so much more, was that? Energy report?
I don't recall, actually, I think that it was, I have to pull that up and see if there was a battery storage. Solar install.
That's.
I still think it would be the best way to go.
Well, for as long as we can get it funded,
Right. I mean, I would go with the insulation and the solar.
They do, is that common in funding like at least?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here to pass things on.
Because
I don't see it in the list of their recommendations.
It's commonly not, I mean, usually solar panels are just going and selling back, reverse. It's going back to the grid.
so,
but I mean, we've had, in the past 2 to 3 years, we've had 3 to 4 outages, one of them being almost a day.
And the generator was an argument.
The generator works, but I'm just saying, if we go ahead with a school, that's gonna be taken care of. If we had the backup, then we would be able still maybe to have internet.
Your backup would be great. I just don't know, batteries are so expensive.
So it actually on page 3 of that audit, it has it listed. They're claiming that we would need 47 panels on the roof. We would generate 19 kilowatts. Potential annual kilowatt produced. We would cover 91% of our electric load with what we generated theoretically. I do know that panels degrade as they age and so on and so forth. But it does also have listed here a battery size of a 23 kilowatt hour at a cost of 29,316. So it seems to me that we could also ask for that to be funded, which would theoretically run this building 23 kilowatt hours. It should run this building for
At least 3 days.
I would think, especially if we knew that we needed to be conservative.
The biggest use would be the heat.
Well, and again, that's because we have hydronic, it would just be the circulators. So 23 kilowatt battery storage system with an 8-hour energy storage capacity should be installed, is how it's written here on section 1.1, page 2.
I think we want to go with that.
Which would bring the total cost up to about $100,000 to solar and battery this, right? 70 for panels, 30 for battery. Estimated.
And the insulation wouldn't be that much,
No, the insulation was listed. You might be able to find that faster than I can.
about 40.
Well, on page 5, is that where you're finding this? For high insulation level?
Yes, so that's their projected payback.
Oh,
Um,
it's not the cost.
It does have projected initial investment, so yes, that is where. If we were to control external air leakage, that's a $1,300 expense, improve attic insulation, that's a $12,000 expense. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're fairly small.
But it could help.
Yeah, what could it hurt?
I mean, it'd only take them 2 days, if that, to do the insulating.
Well, and actually here, I guess I would need some clarification on this. I might be incorrect. That $69,000 number shows on page 5 that includes the battery backup. The solar and the battery comes in at 69. 69,951, so it's 70.
So we could easily stay under 100,000.
Right, if we were to ask for, and again, page 5, if we were to ask for line 5, line 4, line 3. And in my opinion, we also should ask for line 2. So in order to reduce the HVAC hours of operation, their thought is we would put in smart thermostats that would use things like setbacks and occupied building times. With a radiant floor and a hydronic system, those aren't as effective because it deals with thermal mass. They don't work that well, but they do work. They do save you some. Line 3 is control the air leakage. That's the weather stripping. That's the spray foam, the caulking around the windows, that kind of thing. Line 4, attic insulation. Line 5, fixed tilt solar photovoltaic with battery. So again, my 1/5 of an opinion here is that's what we should ask for. We should leave out line 1 where we replace our HVAC units with heat pumps. Just because I just can't believe that it could do it on its own.
But what about, for that price of 21? I mean, could one be used in this room like air conditioning now? Instead of that's what if I bought one, that's what I use it for, air conditioning, not heating.
Right. So the only concern I have there, and Tori didn't. The way that she worded it was for anything that is on the list. The way this is written, it's replace the HVAC units, not supplement. So I'm not sure if we could get funding to supplement, I'm all about it.
Then how come it's a recommended list, replace, well, we don't.
So that would be a thing, you know, that would be a thing that I don't know if Tori could answer, or if it would be the people from the energy audit. I'm not sure where that answer comes from.
Mhm.
If the term replace is kind of a fixed thing, I'm not in favor of replacing. I am in favor of supplementing, and like you said, creating a little air conditioning in this building.
Instead of the window units people have to have.
Yeah,
they're power.
yeah, consumers. So
You're making a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we ask for grant funding, or we start the grant funding process. For lines 2 through 5 on page 5 of the town office energy audit.
I'll second the motion.
Any further comments or discussion?
Is there a way that we can add something in where if we got some clarity on line 1 about replace versus supplement, that we could then ask for grant funding on line 1 as well? Because the entire project cost is 122,000. That's you know, a fifth of what our upper limit is.
Right.
I just don't want to put the town in a position where we lose our hydronic heating. Because we looked for a $21,000 grant.
Why would we lose it?
If we're awarded. Well, we would still get to choose. If we're awarded the grant, that doesn't mean that we have to do it.
And I didn't really have that conversation with her, so,
You would bring the temperature down to the 70 range. To some of the building, not all of it.
so what they're recommending is that we replace an oil-fired boiler with a 10-ton air-cooled heat pump. That's what the replacement is.
That also means that when we lose electricity, the building loses it. That battery backup, and even that propane generator wouldn't be enough.
Well, I'm not right now in favor of getting rid of the. It's, you know, I think it's a conversation that we had when. You know, it needs to be replaced.
So yeah, in that case, I'd say I'm stick with the motion on the table, 2 through 5.
We need your manager.
No, I think, we found some, verbiage here that said that they wanted us to replace our oil furnace with, and we don't want to do that.
No.
So we're not going to amend it unless someone else speaks to it. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor? Opposed? So carried. Good, get that done. I meant to ask Alex, but do you know anything about this activity contractors? I'm sure that you had any conversation with like FEMA that
Oh,
we should have some people on ready, you know.
so at the ready, is that, do you mean the V-Trans at the ready list, or they asked saying you should set up your own?
Well, I heard it numerous times in different meetings that
Okay.
each town should have their own at-ready list for emergencies. That means that you kind of have this agreement with a few contractors, like with FEMA,
Yeah,
a flood, and say, yes, we'll work for the town, and this is the rate we'll charge, so you won't get gouged, and we have your paperwork. So do you have anything to add?
I would just say, I think it's a good idea to do. You can also, if you do it regularly and follow a procurement process, you'll be, you know, safer bet for doing emergency repairs, and they can probably just follow and getting
So
people
this
out there.
would, this would kind of, go over our procurement policy.
Right,
We would kind of like be pre-bidding,
Yes.
you know, putting it out free. And it's good for a year, and you're only gonna work, you're gonna tell us what you're gonna work for. And if we like it, you'll be on the list. If we don't, we won't.
You know what I think that might be a good idea to do is that one of the next hack meetings, we're gonna be talking about mutual aid agreements. Payer standards, it might be good to talk to Alec about adding that to, trying to get a little more information about what that process will look like. Because I definitely heard it is recommended, and I believe V-Trans uses a process like that.
Yeah, so this I took out of the papers from Belvedere, request for qualifications at the ready road maintenance excavation service.
Alec might actually be working. I can ask Alec to get more information from Belvedere about that.
I know it was recommended.
Yeah.
Even when I wasn't on the board to do it, and we never did it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to wait and get more information, or
Uh,
are we ready to present something?
The only thing I have that I didn't have last time that we talked about this was the example of the form that I had sent around to everybody a while ago. It's just a broad, it's exactly what it sounds like. This is what we have for equipment, this is the hourly rate for the equipment, this is what you agreed to. I know on the state purchasing, the BGS policy, they also outline the payment terms from the state to the contractor. They go into great detail about arbitration and all these other legalese things. That are way above my head, but. As far as us, whether it expedites us with FEMA or it doesn't, I do think that it would be valuable to have. Rates that are set and agreed upon through a fixed amount of time with contractors that are willing to do work with us. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't put work that should be bid out to bid. It just means that we would have a contact list for people that do the work. Should this town experience some turnover, either on the board level, the town clerk level, or the highway department level. Don't really want to have to walk in and start from scratch and do a Google search to say, hey, who knows these roads? You know, there are contractors that have worked here before. And I think it would be a good idea to have them on file and have them agree to a rate. Because I have a feeling that when the disaster response work comes out, we are charged emergency rates. As most towns would be, most people would be. And if we had that as an agreed to thing. And again, on the state policy, there is actually another line. So you have your equipment rates, your equipment, your rates, it also has overtime rates and, you know, emergency or hazard rates or anything like that, so. That form is kind of imperfect, but I would like to see us do that. I would like to see us have that on file. Again, it helps, sounds like it will help, but even if it doesn't, I just think it's a good idea. I don't know if we need, I don't know what we need in order to move forward with that, if we chose to.
It's up to, the board. They feel like, they understand this point, or they need more information, and if so, what information are they looking? I'll pass this around, this is done.
I think we need more information than just reaching out and finding somebody that will work with us.
The only thing that I can think of that might be valuable as far as more information is things to put in the contract. You know, I don't have a copy of the form that Belvedere uses. And I think that the form that the state uses is a little bit intense for us. I don't know that we need something that thorough.
That the insurance on there.
Yeah, which is, I think is a huge,
VLTC is gonna want that for anyone working for the town, so yeah.
and right now, I don't believe that we have a copy of any of that on file
From anyone,
from anyone. Not to say that our contractors aren't insured, but you know, we should probably have a copy of that.
Need a copy of the W-9, COI, and contract. And I'm told that for workers' comp, if they're not, if it's a smaller business, you have to have a copy of the liability, as well as auto, and rules are gonna probably be changing next year, so that they may be required to have workers' comp or with
But they're starting that now and the Department of Labor, you know, nonprofits now even have to have workers' comp, they're making everybody. Get it.
And even before I had employees, when it was just me on my own, I had to have on file everywhere I worked, there was a liability waiver form where I'm a sole proprietor and I don't have workman's comp because workman's comp won't cover me.
Well, the town was just audited, well, Vermont League of Towns came back with the audit, workers' comp audit, and said that I think we owed like 8,000 or 9,000, maybe Belinda can correct me, but we called Steve Y, and it's because we didn't submit maybe the contract or this form. I've forgotten what it's called, but there were a couple of forms you have to submit, but again, we might be able to get that down, but in the future, moving forward, it may be that, I don't know if we put. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and I would think that as a part of our, maybe not our purchasing policy, but as a part of our contracts, we probably should write on there that we don't pay you until we have the forms that we need to make sure we don't get stuck with this insurance stuff. I know when the latest round of disaster stuff happened, that was my feeling was that if the contractors wanted to be paid for the work they had done, they needed to do the load counts and have the labor broken out in the way that we needed it to submit to FEMA. Because it's so much harder to go back through and track that later. So their bills needed to show what FEMA needed to see. I don't know if that was followed up on, but that was the conversation I had with with Dylan and a couple of contractors that were working there. Was we signed the orders and I'm not signing it unless we have all the information we need.
I did ask him today if these contracts that we just received from Gravel were specified on class 3 or 4, because that's important information. And he said I could request that they would provide that information. More of an itemized billing, but I don't know about the workers, you know, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I'll add that to the list.
Yeah, okay.
Where are we?
My opinion, 1 year probably isn't going to be long enough. Maybe a year and a half.
They did guarantee rates.
That's what you did 3 years, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty lengthy where that knows what the price of fuel, labor, whatever. I'm just saying a year and a half.
I know the state's purchasing policy is a 3-year one. I know all the contracts that I hold with them, their windows and doors and different things. They're all 3-year, and from the contractor side of things, working with the state, I'm very, very skeptical of a 3-year contract. I would be skeptical of an 18-month contract. I don't see any reason why we couldn't just renew them yearly. I mean, there's a 6 or 8 month construction window. I would hate to have to hold their feet to the fire for a 2-season. For a 2-season.
I'm just thinking of long term, if you have a change over on the board, now you gotta go through this.
Yeah.
Particularly in emergencies, I think materials aren't there. Like, cost of materials and things like that go up.
The materials, I think we purchase.
Yeah, it's usually their labor and their equipment costs, their equipment costs and their hourly costs.
We have the tax exempt purchasing power.
So did you make a motion? No. What is the motion?
You figure a year. If I were in that position, if I were in a contractor's position, I would want a year contract. That would give me the flexibility to make sure that I'm not losing money on.
I'll make a motion that we go through this process based on 1 year contract.
Would second that.
So we'll begin the year once we have all the paperwork and, we need to advertise it. Not just ask people.
Yes, I would
It
agree.
needs to be in the paper.
Much like the Belvedere ad.
Yeah.
So when would you start this? Are you talking October possibly or December?
So now that we're talking about logistics, I would like to see us have it lined up with our fiscal year. I think that makes sense. That way there is a part of our budget preparation that we do every year, we can. Just.
So you're saying July 1st?
We'd be straddling 2 construction season.
But part of our,
Part 1.
Yeah.
budget process will be starting soon. I would think, can I suggest January 1st? A year because we need to know by the end of January. So what does it have to do with our budget?
But nothing necessarily, I just thinking as far as repetition and being able to make this a system that we can easily do, we are going through that process then. It wouldn't get lost in the shuffle or hidden in the back of the filing cabinet. I'm not opposed to any date, I just think that the date should be uniform across all contractors. I don't
Oh,
want
yes.
gravel contracting to be October and Kingdom to be, you know, I don't want to chase these people.
June or whatever.
Right.
I'm sorry about, I have a question about that. So if we put this out to bid, wouldn't we get all of the contracts in at the same time? I mean, like if we put it out to bid in January and it goes from January to January.
And we had the deadline, yeah, you're right, that would negate everything I'm thinking about. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be January, I was just trying to think, you know, when you mentioned budget,
Before things kick in.
yeah, I don't like it that it would be in 2 construction seasons, so.
Yeah.
I don't like to do 31st and July 1st. But it could be November 1st, I don't care.
I think a lot of your contractors for this, they're planning in December what they're going to be working with or doing. So I think if you started it to January 1st, you got a firm idea what they're going to be charging for the next season. Through the manpower, equipment, materials.
Can I see that again? So my feeling was that the reason we have this list is if we had an emergency. That it doesn't mean we could just call these people out. Well, there's our act on an as needed basis.
Well, I think our purchasing policy would still stand, even if they had this
Yeah.
outside of a declared emergency.
And this list will be used to seek cost proposals. Right, so you've got someone who is interested in working for us, and rather than maybe putting it in the paper all the time, we have contractors who are willing for us to ask them for a bid.
It's advantageous because we already know that they're gonna be within.
Yeah. Right.
And if you have an adequate number on there, it's really, probably will seek out all of those in the area anyway, otherwise if they're coming from too far away, the cost, they wouldn't be bid. They would not be able to bid under anybody else, so. So we have the motion by Lee to move through this process. I will probably elaborate. Can I elaborate, or just, it says motion by Lee to move through this process based on a 1-year process, seconded by Parity. But I'll elaborate if I'm allowed to change that, or you just keep the motion as it is.
Oh, you can't add words to his mouth.
Words in my mouth. I have it at home all the time. If I don't speak the same language, oh, it sounds like English.
Interpretation, huh?
Oh, God, yes.
Yes, it will tie in, and I'm kind of note taking, so will it tie into the whole discussion?
So, yeah, you can add a sentence after the motion, just explaining what our thought was,
But the motion itself has to be verbatim is how I understand
pretty
it.
much, yeah. That's why sometimes I apologize, but I might reiterate the motion to add.
That sense explaining.
You can just let us know when, after we've advertised and people have applied, and we can pick the time to make the year start again.
Yeah, like I said, the only thing I was thinking is I just don't want to chase these people, but Michelle's absolutely right, you're right. Once we get the responses, that'll be when and as long as it's not in the middle of a construction season, like a fiscal year, like some other more unsuggested ones. That, I think that's fine.
I'll probably give them a month, maybe to finish that out at a time. Yeah. Did you vote on that?
No?
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so carried.
Can I just go back? I had one more thing to talk about for my report, if I'm allowed to do that. It's just one thing that I was working on. I started researching an equipment sharing between towns. I know Woodbury has a front bucket loader, tree trimmer. And Dylan wanted me to find out how it was, and I asked them if they would be interested in sharing their equipment. Woodbury Town Clerk is going to approach their select board. Their select board. And in the meanwhile, I've reached out to Lemuel County Natural Resource Conservation District to get their MOU for the hydro seeders that they share. And then I talked to the leagues of cities and towns to see what they have as far as MOUs. They're sending me a little bit of information. I talked with the planning commission, and I think Alec is kind of working on mutual aid, but can we tie this into mutual aid? And then I spoke with Ricky Moran at the town of Eden to see what sort of equipment they had, and they might be interested, just to kind of put some feelers out there on, the next step would be get interest from towns, and then get kind of build an inventory of what equipment people have and what we need, and then possibly doing a purchase of smaller units, like things that can be shared throughout the year by multiple towns, like brush trimmers.
Yeah, like the one we have that goes on our excavator.
It's pretty heavy duty, but they were saying it's just too big to maneuver, so they wanted a small one. But then Ricky said that if he had rented the small ones, he didn't use that they weren't very good. So just collecting all that information, but it just started me thinking that there is equipment out there that we could share. So anyone has any opposition to this, I'll just continue to research.
No, I think it's a fine idea. I hear almost daily about how the brush on the side of the roads is impacting a certain.
Speed limits, signs, traffic signs.
Oh, I don't feel those complaints. I get complaints from people with large trucks that have broken antennas. And I get them daily. I'm excited to see us moving forward with brush.
It's always been an issue.
Yeah, but we live in Vermont, we have trees, we love trees.
Yeah, I think Dylan's plan was to do it, maybe not this year, but to do out a really aggressive trimming and then it's in every other kind of cycle. And that's why we started thinking, well, maybe that's how you would set up like this type of equipment. So you would just figure that out.
Yeah.
On cycle, so.
Excellent.
You want to talk about the Vermont 250 anniversary commissions?
Oh. Or we sort of put, I don't know if we need. So, I think I sent this out to everybody, but, the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission is just seeking a resolution to get town commitment to work with them to kind of create a committee that is high in diversity and, essentially I'm just gonna get the points here, hold on. But, it coordinates these committees from every town to share their histories, to include stories more diverse than are commonly known, to serve and unify all Vermonters. This commission encourages every committee to take part, no matter how big or small, in the events or activities. And they want to know how each town and city will commemorate its history. That can be decided by this particular committee. And to put this out to the Historic Society, and there was some interest. And I think we probably need to further develop that interest before we actually sign this resolution.
I have some bites from them. I think they're the ideal people to do it about our history. I haven't got a commitment at this point. But even if something small, you know. We have a lot of new people in this town. Has anyone read the diary of Seth Hubble, the first settler that came? You know, this. It's, I mean, we have all that stuff. We have our charter, the first landowners, a lot of our land. I mean, we have a lot of that stuff that probably a lot of people.
I didn't read I haven't read the actual diary, but I do remember being on the Historical Society's Facebook page and reading about some of the trials and tribulations of the guy that first came here.
Yeah, that's what
Oh,
it is.
Mullen.
Yeah. This family.
And nobody ever takes the time to do this with the little historical sign in front of the church. By
Yeah.
your house. That's some pretty cool information as well.
We have a whole history on that. The first black man to start a white congregation,
Yes.
started that church, George S. Brown.
What's the name?
George S. Brown. They're trying to tie in the architecture of the church to this schoolhouse. It's kind of similar, same time period. They haven't really found a connection, a real connection.
It might be an interesting push for the Historical Society. Really, it's a good project.
It is, I'll work on this. Okay, the community barbecue, we're starting to pull that together for, September 6th. We have, some new people that are starting to work with us on that. Trying to get more people involved. We are looking for another pop-up.
Yeah, I know a guy. I'll have it here.
Okay.
One,
Are you an owl?
we had one, and the wind ate it, yeah.
Pretty much we have, the same thing going on. The fire department's gonna cook for us, thankfully, and, you know, we have the planning commission, the schoolhouse people, the school board is gonna do, ice cream. Scoop ice cream. Library is gonna participate. So we do have one issue, that, I wanted to discuss with you. Michael Thomas at the meeting last night mentioned that, he was coming down to set up and share things. So the whole idea of having this event is to bring the community together, enjoy your neighbors, and to find out what the select board's been working on for the year. So I'm gonna call Michael, he's more than willing to come. But this is not a political event, this is an event to bring people together. Have fun. And to find out what the select board is doing, because as Michael said, nobody knows what's going on. It's an opportunity to find out. I think we're gonna close on the forest of September 5th. That will be a good celebration. The table is showing where the trails are and so forth. And by then we should know whether we got the Community Village Initiative grant for the schoolhouse or not. So there's some information.
Just to understand that this is not a political platform occasion.
Well, I'm gonna call him and talk to him. He's more than welcome to come.
Not if he's gonna be proselytizing his own views.
Well, and it's my feeling that it's a town event put on by town officials, and therefore, if you would like to have a space there, you should be a town official. Not saying that you can't come and have your own opinions and do what you want to do with those, but if you're gonna have a presentation.
I don't know what.
That's what the fourth meeting is about.
Right. I just don't think that the barbecue is the place to set up a tent and have a table and have flyers and pass out t-shirts and. I just don't feel like that's the venue for that. Not to say that anybody that's interested isn't welcome to, get to talk or to. But there would be a permit, I'm sure, involved in having to have some kind of event on our space if they wanted to have their own event.
Again, the town is holding the September 4th meeting for that purpose, so.
Yeah, I don't think the community barbecue is a place for politicizing anything. We're
No.
doing a positive thing.
I don't even invite the state representatives. If one of them lives in this town, if he comes, he comes. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Okay, I don't have anything else. Anyone else?
Sorry, Michael, did you say a pop-up tent? I didn't catch all of that answer.
Yeah, yes.
He had a really nice one.
In which time block are you going to start at 5?
5 to 7. Which was, pretty much the same. Friday.
But this time I'll wear my big pin that I've had for 25 years, and my first boss at State Surplus getting me, trust me, I work for the government. Well, I used to say that when I was on the board, if somebody questioned something, I rebuilt. My boss said, why do you always say that? I said, because what I really want to say would get me written up and possibly fired.
So do we probably should make a quick motion to, allow the Hardwick Electric and Comcast Cable Communications and Consolidated, to move the utility pole, which will be in the way of obstructing the new school street bridge. The board is going to sign that now. They're going to actually move it a little bit away from the road. It'll be farther from the road.
Are you making a motion? or-
Yes, I just made that.
Okay, I'll second it.
Sorry, I missed that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. I'll come help you in a minute.
I'll make the motion that we adjourn this meeting at 8:26 P.M.
I'll second.
Thank you.
So. $500 later. Hey, that's more than what you said the last time I saw you. Being getting cheaper. I wait, no, hang on, let me try that again. Really?